You're listening to Eat, Play, Sex with Dr. Cat, the place to up-level that sexy life of yours, with expert talk on sex, love, and nutrition.
Oh my God. And so that actually, brought me to your well, you're so candid in your videos. You're so candid with yourself and what you are learning, which to me is the most inspiring teachers, the ones who own exactly where they're at in their own process, and they're not pretending to be anywhere else than where exactly they are. And you did this IG video called Ambiguity, and you said the first words, ambiguity is the death of intimacy. And I literally slammed my desk and I was like, boom, yeah. And that's when I slid into your DMs and I was like, yo, what's up?
Yo. Oh, wow. I got a yo. Wow.
Yeah, that was sexy. Oh my God. That was like a penny dropper for every woman on this podcast. Traver.
Yeah, that came to me in a meditation. And it came to me after a relationship I had ended, that I looked back in hindsight and went, holy shit, I feel so bad for her because I was so ambiguous the entire time. And then looked back on my relational patterning and went, wow, I have been ambiguous in 95% of the relationships I've been in since I got divorced. I was not ambiguous in my marriage. I went right up to her and said, I want to fucking marry you. But since then, why is that? And what has been the ramification of that? Trying to then put myself in the other person's position. Say, what's it like to be with someone who's quite articulate and very good with wording around describing the ambiguous to make it feel like it's not ambiguous, but it's fucking ambiguous.
Yeah.
How is that? How is that in not just in relational life? Like I took that video and took it to the guys in my men's group and said, where in your life do you have this answer to a question? It doesn't matter what the question is. I don't know. The answer is, I don't know. And okay, good. Do you really not know? Was the question I asked them. Or do you not want to know? Or do you want to not know? Because if you know, then you have to make a decision. And if you make a decision, that's a stake in the ground. And then what if you did put that stake in the ground? What would shift about your relationship? And I'm speaking to men here saying, what if you went back to your partner and said, I'm sorry, I think I've been 1 foot in, 1 foot out. In not perhaps globally in the relationship, but in these particular areas. Where am I not showing you who I really am for fear that you're going to hurt me? For not willing to take that risk. And so what if you actually did put that stake in the ground? Right? And then after this, I had a conversation with someone who I was ambiguously dating. That here's the deal. I apologize for that, first of all. This has probably been really confusing for you. Here's the thing. I want to date you. I want to be in relationship with you. I'm dating you for the purpose of creating a relationship afterwards. These are my intentions. How does that feel? And I just watched her shoulders drop. And I could sense that she just relaxed. I went, oh, okay, first of all, here's some fucking honesty, which 2020 is not ripe with. And the dating world doesn't seem to have an abundance either. And if I'm actually speaking from my stomach and my heart and saying, yeah, this is it. I'm actually pursuing you for this reason, to create a relationship, to create this kind of relationship. There's going to be some expanded parts or some unconventional parts of this relationship, but here's my intention. And so I asked these guys to do this as an exercise, 1 in their relationships, 2 in their lives. And the reaction that I got back was monumental. And I knew I was onto something, where they'd say, yeah, it actually opened up a conversation with my partner. Because I would tell them too, ask how has it felt to be in relationship with me with this ambiguity?
Wow.
And then they get the pain, they get the reality of like, wow, it's been really hard for me. I don't know where I stand in this relationship, and that doesn't make me feel safe. And that's the word, Kat. Like I hope I have come to the depth of that word, or been on a journey with the depth of that word for about a year, of what does safety mean to a woman? Because if you asked me 2 years ago, when I was teaching women's self-defense, I would say it's the ability to rip your elbow across someone's nose and know that you're going to be able to protect yourself in any situation. Like that was my old definition.
Yeah.
physical safety. And beyond that, like, how can you not feel physically safe? What else is there besides physical safety? And I went to this workshop that was 4 men, 4 women. And it was all shadow work. So it was like, who wants to go in the middle of the floor and cry and punch the pillow? And like, oh, pull out your deepest childhood trauma and then share it with the group. And
oh,
not
fuck,
fun.
that sounds like fun. Yeah.
Like 5 days being locked in a house with lots of tissues and people's stuff. And as the course of the weekend went on, the men sharing just the most horrific shit they had in them, I watched the women's shoulders. I watched how they breathed. I watched how they talked. And they would say we felt more and more safe with you as the weekend's gone on, despite learning stuff that I would have kept to myself for fear that if someone knew, it would make them feel unsafe around me. Right? How can you explain trauma or things that you've done that are out of integrity? These huge things, right? And I'm not talking about violations of women, but just violations of your own integrity, and then have someone trust you more because of it. That was like a boop, like my little brain just went, what the fuck's going on here? And by the end of the weekend, to have them all say to the men in the room, like, this is the safest we've ever felt around you. I went, all right, there's some weird shit going on here.
What a powerful experience, because I can really relate to that too. The moment that somebody shares their humanness, or where they feel like a mess or they don't have their shit together, and I see that, and it's not just the intellectual verbalization of it, right? Kind of like what I was talking about earlier, but it's like the visceral, like, oh God, I just want to throw up right now. Like this, feel like a mess, I'm a puddle. It does make my shoulders relax, because it's like, oh, I can connect with that. That right there. Because I also have that too. I feel like a mess too. I can relate, I can connect, and I don't feel like you think that you're higher than me. And we can connect there.
Yeah, I think that's what we fall in love with. Like, not no, it's a cliche to say you fall in love with the mess, but you fall in love with the humanity. And if we're not willing to show each other our humanity, then cool. I just, date my Instagram profile, right? It's curated as shit. I can go fall in love with that. I remember when I was writing publicly for a year, traveling, and was writing about my divorce, was writing about heartache, was writing about hospice and all of these experiences that I was going through. And I would have women reach out publicly and say, I've fallen in love with you. I was like, no, you fell in love with my writing. You don't know a fucking thing about me. You've never been in the same room with me. And so I think it's unpeeling of the chest armor. And for guys listening to this, when a woman does that, like, realize the reverence that realize the uniqueness and how intimate that, and I'm struggling for the right word, how sacred that is, because you're getting something that most people don't get. Right? Like, that's when I go, oh, you just shared something that 5 people in the world know. I am special for getting to hear that. This is a unique situation. This is a special conversation. I need to have reverence around that. And that's the entry point, I think, to really deep intimacy in other people.
Yeah, I was like, but it's so hard, Traver, but it's so hard. And what I'm wondering, so you're sharing this experience and what you learned here, but then I'm also reminded of the women who might think, well, how do I get my guy to show up like that? How do I get him to do that without demasculating him, or, making him feel wronged for this? Is there a way that I can influence him, or?
It's $1 million question, right? If we have the answer to that in a book, you and I would be having this on private jets, this conversation. Yeah, there are ways to do it, and there are ways to kind of facilitate it. Every time I get a woman asking me, and this is hundreds of times a week, how do I get my guy to X? Right back quickly. So what you're asking me is, how do I get someone to do something they don't want to do? And they're like, oh shit, you're right. I go, how would I get him? What if he emailed me and was like, hey, how to get my woman to come to jujitsu with me? Like, get all dirty and wrestle and choke a bunch of people. They're like, oh, there's really nothing he could do. I'm like, well, that may be the case, that your guy may not want to do that. He may not be able to. May not have that capacity, and or he may not have been given permission. So this is the $1 million statement for all of the women listening. You all are geniuses, like the best in the world at a couple amazing things. And one of them is enrolling us. One of them is inviting men, enrolling men into doing things that we may not do otherwise, into sharing things that we actually want to share. But here's the thing, you got to make it feel safe, and you got to make it feel like it's our idea. And just like marketing, you got to sell us on the benefits, right? So you have a guy that's like, this is just not his world. He literally has no idea what you're talking about. It's as if in some way I've described it in the past is, imagine you being fluent in Mandarin Chinese. You and I are sitting at a table eating and about to order dinner, and you slide the menu across the table to me and it's in Mandarin. And you're like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I can't read this. And you're like, well, if you loved me, you'd know. Or like, ooh, like, oh shit. You speak it, I don't. So you almost have to model it for me. And also frame it around, hey, I want to feel more connected to you. I want you to feel more connected to me. I want to have a richer experience in this relationship. What I would love, what would make me feel safe, seen, turned on, secure, all of these things, is if we got past talking about the day-to-day and we dropped into something that was a little bit deeper. So that when I ask you how you feel, you don't rattle off your itinerary for the afternoon. And if I ask you again, well, how did that make you feel? One, you don't shame me for the question, but two, you actually take a breath and feel, and then answer it from a place that knowing that you're going to nourish this relationship. So I try to use words with men to say, like, hey, if you're trying to grow a flower, you can't just pour air on it. It needs water, it needs nutrients, it needs sunlight. This is the same as a relationship. So many men are out there like, well, it's got air, right? Like nothing is wrong. Yes, it is. And it's also vastly undernourished. So how do you do it is, one, you do it yourself. And then two, women, you have to be able to hold space for what does come up.
Yeah.
And then this is what I've taken from Traver Boehm, who's a phenomenal teacher of mine. So, and it's hard for a lot of women to hear. When you get a little bit of it, you have to celebrate it and say like, oh my God, that made me feel amazing. When you shared that thing, I feel so much closer to you. I feel so much safer now. I feel so much more connected to you. And then speak in some dude language. Like this turns me on. This makes me love you more. This makes me want to be engaged in the relationship more. Or explain, Kat, like I wish some of my exes, and I'm not putting blame on them, but I wish some of them had sat me down and said, I don't feel safe. Now take a breath before you said, but you know how to elbow someone. I taught you that. And explain to me about emotional safety. Like teach me what it's like to walk in a relationship where you don't feel emotionally safe and what that prevents you from doing. And if I'm a guy worth my salt, I want you fully and open. I want you like as expanded as you can possibly be in our relationship. That's the point of the relationship. And so share that with me, explain that to me, and then lead by doing it yourself.
Lovers, thank you again for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, hit subscribe and head over to eatplaysex.com to connect with me and grab my sexy guides. Because my goal here is to get you to eat, play, and sex better so you can improve your sex life, which will improve every aspect of your life. Until next time, keep it sexy.